switch to Ben. So Ben, if you can say a few words about yourself and about the company.
Sure. Thanks so much
Thanks,
for setting
Manny.
this up, Misha. And thank you, Manny. So pleasure to be here. My name is Ben, and I'm the CEO of a company called Hirundo. Um, Basically, at Hirundo, we're proud to be the first startup to do something called machine learning, which used to be a field of research, and we're the first to bring it to market. About the problem that we're solving, I'm not going to bring any news by telling you that every enterprise wants to adopt AI, right? We see like the rush that's happening, external pressures, internal pressures to adopt. Yet AI poses huge risks on any organization that adopts it. We dig a bit deeper when it comes to the problems of AI, and we dig to the fact that basically AI training or AI learning is a one-way track. Once you started the training process, or maybe you took a pre-trained open source model, it includes basically some inherent knowledge, maybe also knowledge that you fine-tune on top of, and some
Hmm.
inherent traits and behaviors that are pretty much impossible to remove. So when we're talking about an enterprise that maybe fine-tunes on a lot of information, confidential data, PII, stuff like this, once it's there, it's there. There's no way to teach AI to forget, which is what we're trying to do. And once you realize that it has a certain amount of hallucinations, biases, all of the known jailbreaks, vulnerabilities, and so forth, you're only going to try and put band-aids on. That's the current market approach. When we think about current solutions, basically everyone in AI security are focusing on guardrails, which pretty much act as an external firewall, right? So filtering the inputs, filtering the outputs, both to prevent the leakage of problematic data and also to prevent known vulnerabilities like jailbreaks, prompt injections, and so forth. When you think about what's missing in the industry, basically a firewall is not enough. It's just one layer of defense. And I think the reason that the industry is so focused on that is because we're so early on. So like in this hype cycle and in the adoption of AI, and we still haven't reached this maturity. When you think about the future AI stack, there needs to be a layer of remediation of not just protecting the outside of a model as a black box, but entering this black box and conducting what we call a nervous surgery of sorts to remove these unwanted bits and pieces. So at Hirundo, we basically built a platform that allows enterprises to do this neurosurgery, to remove retroactively without having to retrain the model any unwanted data. Again, it could be confidential, PII, outdated, inaccurate, and also unwanted behaviors. So not just protecting in a monitoring sense in real time by a list of rules maybe and filters, but actually removing the behavior that poses risk, the model being prone to manipulations, the model tending to hallucinate because it's being too creative, the model being too biased because it was trained on real world biased data. Um, we're a deep tech company of sorts. So, Misha, I know that you asked a bit about the status.
Hmm.
In my background, I come from public policy background. I was a researcher at Oxford, so I treat this more as a governance issue, but we're a deep tech company in the sense of our chief scientist was the dean of computer science at the Technion, Israel's leading STEM university. We're a team of 11 people, half of which are PhDs in computer science, deep data science perspectives that led us to basically build the state-of-the-art algorithms that every big tech company and leading so like research departments in academia have been trying to solve. Unlearning has been a unsolvable challenge for the last 10 years in the industry. Obviously, been much more interest since the rise of LLMs, and we're the first to bring it to market. We have five filed US patents. I think that's the gist of it. Maybe I can, and many forgive me for presenting slides eventually.
No, no, no.
Um,
Let me make you a host.
yeah. So just to give you a sense maybe of the achievements that could be done using our platform, it's like the difference between the other solutions. So first of all, again, like every issue that you see here is just like a manifestation of the fact that models being trained is a one-way track and models are being seen as a black box, right? So it could be both problems that are inherent to the data that a model is trained on or problems that are more generalistic and global, like the different behaviors, right? Um, and basically, when we talk about the differences, I mentioned guardrails. Fine-tuning also is something that obviously is being done at every enterprise. But what we need to know about fine-tuning is it's a process of adding data, adding information, trying to mask the previous, so like tendencies and behaviors with new information. The issue is that it doesn't actually remove anything. It just adds more reference points, hoping that they cover the things that you want to get out. Unlearning is the process of reduction, of removal, which brings much more so like adequate results. And when I say adequate results, these are very fresh results. We haven't published yet any blog post or LinkedIn post about this, so you are the first to see it. But recently we applied our behavioral learning framework on removing jailbreaks, reducing the tendency of the model to be prone to manipulations. Unlike any other solution that's about guardrails, we don't add any inference costs. It's not about using an external model to evaluate in real time how the model acts. It's actually looking at the model when it's offline, understanding what neurons needs to be changed, doing this tweaking, and then basically creating a copy of the model that acts exactly the same in any other way, but in this
Mm-hmm.
behavior or thing that you want to remove is completely different, right? So here, basically, we took Llama 3, one of the smaller models that are being used more to lower inference costs. The whole process took us only 3 minutes, and we reached 85% reduction in the amount of successful attacks against the model, again, without manipulating anything in the inference, in the actual deployment of the model. This was evaluated based on a benchmark that was not even part of the unlearning process. So completely external, a third-party benchmark by Meta, Purple Llama. If you know it, it's being used so like to evaluate deployment of LLMs. So the original success rate of this benchmark, Purple Llama, on Llama 3, 3B was 45%, meaning almost half of the attacks against the model were successful in gaining things like synthetic passwords, credit card information, IDs, stuff like this. After our learning process, which again only took 3 minutes, only 6.7% of the attacks were successful. This could be done on any fine-tuned model, on any pre-trained model, any open source model. It could be a small one, like the 3 billion parameters ones that I mentioned, or things like Llama 4, which include 120 billion parameters, very global. And maybe the next important thing is that it could also be tailored to the needs of every enterprise, right? So if you have your own sort of like examples of the weaknesses of previous deployed models that you had, we're able to do this. And it's much more forward-looking compared to current day solutions, because we treat jailbreaks and vulnerabilities as a behavioral vector, right? So even if there's a 0-day vulnerability that's not exposed yet, and tomorrow will pop up, we're not unlearning it attack by attack. We're unlearning it by understanding how does the representation of the weakness, the internal weakness of the model looks like, and then removing it. And that's what brings such strong results. These are some examples of previously successful attacks compared to like the newly generated responses. And that's, again, by putting the model in the wild, we haven't tweaked anything. And the last example, before I stop, both because of time and maybe because, Misha, you have follow-up questions, is about removing sensitive data. So this is more relevant maybe for more mature organizations that are already conducting fine-tuning on models. But basically, if you already fine-tune the model on top of data, from the cybersecurity lens, it could be that there's some confidential proprietary information that you don't want to have. Maybe you have salary information, IDs. And also from the compliance sense, it could be GDPR or CCPA style of requests, the right to be forgotten, and so forth. The bottom line is sometimes you need to remove things retroactively. So here you can see like the stats on how we use our data unlearning framework to remove PII. We unlearned personal information of 500 people that we fine-tuned the model on top of. And the model remembered basically every piece of information about them after the unlearning process, besides their ID, which was the task that we wanted to achieve. You can see we reached a reduction of 100% accuracy on their IDs in the original model to 0% accuracy, meaning we completely forgot, or the model completely forgot, all of the PII that it previously learned, while, of course, retaining accuracy on everything else. So that's us in a nutshell. We haven't announced it yet, but hoping to announce it on Friday that we closed our seed round recently.
All right.
So moving fast and growing.
Congrats.
Yeah, and excited to later on take any questions that the audience
Great.
might have, but also Misha, if you have some, feel free.
Well, actually, I have a quick question. So you mentioned one of the, well, Llama is one of the models, but are you agnostic? I know there are hyperscalers that are building their own separate solutions, whether it's Meta or Google or there's a handful of others. So are you building a solution that's can be applied to um, any process, any LLM, or are you specific to Meta, for example, or another one?
Yeah, so we're pretty agnostic. I will say today, as of June 5th, 2025, we support any open source model. So we don't care about the size, we don't care about the brand, as long as it's based on
Hmm.
the architecture of transformers, which pretty much 95% of the industry currently uses for
Hmm.
LLMs. We support it. I would say the next step, which is due in about 2 months, is to support also gated models. When I say
Hmm.
gated models, it means closed source, so OpenAI. Google does have some open source models, but Gemini is not open source. Anthropic, Sonnet, Claude, and so forth. Basically, if you think about what we do, and again, I call it a neurosurgery, when we have access to the weights, we literally tamper the weights themselves. So it's like reaching these specific neurons after identifying them and removing them. When we don't have access to the weights, which is the case with GPT, we need to do something else. So what we're developing now is something that we call a prism or a lens. Basically, there is access to something called log probes. I don't want to get too technical, but
Hmm.
there's no full access obviously to the weights, but there is some so like deeper layer that allow you access to through their API. And then we apply the same sort of manipulation that doesn't affect the inference costs, but does change the probability of the model generating an insecure output or a biased output based on the direction or behavior that you want to
Hmm.
optimize. So that's going to be live soon. One of our most recent patents, some crazy work by our research team, which sounded to me like science fiction. Uh, but once we roll out this, then we'll literally support almost every model that exists out there.
Great. And well, on Friday I'll say congrats on the round, so I'm not going to say anything, but until then. But can you say a few words about how big the team is and where you are in terms of I don't know, paying clients or POCs or design partners? Like how uh, how far along are you with with the product?
Yeah. So we are currently 11 people, mostly people in R&D. Again, like this is the last year have been mostly spent on just developing this family of algorithms and building the platform. We have a few paid POCs, mostly in Israel with large organizations, both national agencies
Hmm.
and both private companies.
Hmm.
Currently, our main priority is expanding, I would say, globally. So it's 2:30 a.m. here in Singapore. I'm here for that reason, and also in the US soon. And I will say also we started more from, and this is me being maybe even too frank, but we started more from a data science perspective, right? Our learning is a
Hmm.
framework for data science teams. The more that we interact with the market and the more that we think about the problems that it can solve, not just it being a crazy powerful technology, it seems like cybersecurity is the most relevant niche to target because again, what we offer is basically the only current solution that can actually remediate and de-risk AI in a
Hmm.
deeper layer. So this is also an open call. We're looking to talk to more CISOs. We're looking to interact with more Fortune 500 companies. Would love to, stay in touch, and I'll send later my email here in the chat
Absolutely. And by the way,
because we have many POCs,
Ben,
but we're welcoming more.
for sure. Well, and by the way, Ben, after the call, we'll share, if you're open to this, we'll share your contact details. So whoever's on the call, if obviously there would be Q&A, but if you're interested in connecting, have a sidebar conversation, we'll be sharing ways to connect and engage. I just want to give Ben and Amr an opportunity maybe to share their version of the war story, if you can, without naming names, or I know you've been in the business for such a long time, you've seen it all. So maybe if you can share something interesting, curious, crazy that you've seen. Again, you don't need to share who the company is, but something in your field, whether it's AI or mobile security, something crazy that some war story that you could share. Sorry to put you on the spot, but I thought it could be fun.
I mean, on my side, a lot of the stories are right? Like we feed on every big incident that happens regardless of us. So we have like the Google News notifications or Google search result notifications every time that you see like an AI chatbot makes a ridiculous, atrocious mistake, be it like, again, like that you can bypass LM security by maybe writing in lit code, or like there's the famous, I think like Air Canada, now a court decided that their chatbot promised the user, free flight tickets, and then Air Canada had to provide those free air tickets, right? It's just like we're in such a bizarre time where everyone is using AI or like wants to use AI, but at the same time, the maturity of like understanding how do you govern it, how do you de-risk it, how do you deploy it? So like, checking the box of innovation, but at the same time making sure that like, you're still eligible for everything that it says. So it's like a Wild West moment that we're here to help the industry mature over from.
It's amazing. So basically, you don't need to do marketing. You just need to read the news and you pick up the headlines in the news, and then that's the story that you can use for to make people
Absolutely. And
aware
like,
of.
fortunately or unfortunately, there's many of these news incidents every week.
For sure.